Sophia had always dreamed of a different life. From a young age, she observed the little life of her village curled up on itself, like a flower that refuses to bloom. Here, dreams were not made to come true, they were destined to slowly die out, suffocated by the weight of traditions and looks. She remembered her afternoons spent under the large village oak, an old notebook placed on her knees, where she drew imaginary maps of distant worlds. In these dreams, she went to study in a big city, became an architect or writer, built a life that lived up to her aspirations. But every time she spoke about it, she was answered with a compassionate smile or a frown.
Aquello entenidaldat, Sofia.
Find yourself a good husband. Stay close to your family.
That's what matters.
Sophia didn't believe it.
She wanted more.
She wanted to be free. At 22, she still nourished this flame, fragile but vibrant. She had put aside small dreams, saving enough to go to town, take evening classes, work as an assistant in an office perhaps.
Nothing extravagant, just her own path.
But that winter evening, everything collapsed. His father came home late, soaked from the pouring rain, looking older than his years. His shoulders seemed to carry the weight of the entire universe. Sophia, worried, put down her cup of tea to listen to him. He didn't need many words. The debts had become insurmountable. After the last harvest was devastated by floods, the bank had lost patience. Seizure was imminent. The farm, which 5 generations before them had cultivated, would be lost. But there was a solution. A man from the neighboring village, Mr. Belangi, a rich landowner, had offered to pay off all their debts, on one condition, that Sophia marry his son, Alexander. The silence that followed this announcement was colder than the howling wind outside. Sophia felt her stomach knot, her breath hitched. Marry me? But I don't even know him, she protested, her voice cracking with panic. His father looked away. His mother, sitting on the edge of the fireplace, had her hands clasped, as if in prayer. It's our only hope, my daughter, she whispered. We have nothing left to offer. Except you. Those words hit her harder than any slap.
Sofia no Alexandre Belanger vai repietaschen only.
A once lively boy loved by all, the victim of a tragic horse-riding accident as a teenager, which left him paralyzed. Since then, he had lived in seclusion in his parents' vast home, behind walls so high that it seemed as if they wanted to enclose misfortune itself. The rumors told everything and its opposite. Some said he had become bitter and bitter, others said he had descended into madness. But what mattered to everyone was that Alexander was now diminished, and that a marriage with him was seen as a form of sacrifice. Sophia cried that night like she had never cried before. Not for the unknown that was imposed on him, but for the slow death of his dreams. Each tear that fell down her cheeks seemed to erase part of the future she had imagined. Despite his pleas, despite his attempts at negotiation, despite his anger, nothing worked. Her parents, overwhelmed by shame and fear of losing everything, begged her.
This is our salvation, Sofia. We owe you everything.
Your sacrifice will be our redemption. And so the marriage was organized hastily, almost clandestinely, like a debt that one hastens to pay off. There was no village procession, no music, no laughter. Just a thick grey mist that enveloped the tiny church, making the air heavy, as if even the sky was mourning its happiness. Sophia wore a simple dress, rented for the occasion. No delicate lace, no sumptuous embroidery. Only a white, dull fabric, which seemed to scream its lack of choice. With a sinking heart, she walked toward the altar, each step bringing her closer to a life she never wanted. And then she saw him.
Alexandre.
Sitting in his wheelchair, straight and dignified, dressed in an impeccable dark suit. But what struck Sophia were his eyes. No pity.
No hard feelings. Only immense solitude. A silent dignity.
He made no sudden gesture, did not attempt to hide his condition, or impose his presence. He simply held out his hand to her, a firm but delicate hand, and gave her a discreet smile. A smile that said, I know you didn't choose. Me neither. During the entire ceremony, He only said the essentials, with a soft, almost hesitant voice. And when he slipped the ring on her finger, he avoided looking at her insistently, respecting the icy distance she had placed between them. It was this restraint, this unexpected modesty, which destabilized Sophia more than anything. She expected condescension, pity, maybe even possessiveness. But she found a man, human in front of her.
Fragile, yes.
But infinitely worthy. That day, without knowing it yet, Sophia had met not her jailer, but her first companion of destiny. The following days, Sophia discovered her new world, a huge mansion perched on top of a hill, with its grey stone walls, silent turrets and perfectly trimmed gardens. A place where each old piece of furniture, each precious painting, seemed to whisper memories of a bygone life. The mansion was beautiful, but it was cold. A cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was a coldness of soul, an absence of laughter, of echoes of footsteps, of life. The servants, discreet as shadows, went about their tasks silently, their eyes downcast, their gestures measured. In the immense corridors, the ancient clocks chimed the hours with mournful regularity. Each tick seemed to remind Sophia that time was passing, but nothing was really changing. His room, at the end of a quiet wing, was large and impeccably decorated. The sheets were fresh, the fireplace lit every evening, and the air smelled delicately of dried lavender, a touch that contrasted with the austerity of the rest of the house. But to him it all seemed more like a gilded cage. Alexander, faithful to his first attitude, respected his space. He did not force any proximity, required no presence. They barely shared a few words during the rare meals they ate together, served on a table so long it could have accommodated an army. At night, Sophia slept alone, lulled by the crackling of the fire and her heavy thoughts. Every morning, however, a ritual took place. Outside her door, she found a cup of tea carefully placed on a silver tray, sometimes accompanied by a little note, written in an elegant, almost shy handwriting.
Have a nice day, Sophia.
I'm available if you'd like to explore the library.
Remember, you're free to talk to me if you want.
She read these words with a mixture of irritation and confusion. She never answered. She wasn't ready. The anger she felt against her destiny, against her family, against herself, formed a wall too high, too thick. So she locked her pain in an icy silence, passing Alexander without addressing him more than a distant nod of the head. However, as the days went by, one detail began to intrigue him.
Every morning, after breakfast, Alexandre disappeared.
He rolled silently down a side corridor, towards a wing of the mansion closed by a heavy door. Behind this door he spent whole hours, sometimes late into the night. Sometimes, if she listened, Sophia heard muffled noises, metallic clicking sounds, soft vibrations, discreet outbursts of voices. From time to time, young men in sober suits, carrying engineers' cases or notebooks full of diagrams, walked quickly through the house, their heads bowed. Sophia, at first indifferent, gradually felt curiosity eating away at her. What was Alexander doing in this part of the house? Why were there engineers? What could work be for a man who the whole village thought was living a recluse, broken, useless life? One afternoon, unable to resist any longer, she discreetly called out to one of the servants, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile, who was folding laundry in a neighboring room. "What is he doing there?" Sophia asked, trying to sound detached. The servant looked up at her, and a mysterious smile stretched her lips. A smile that seemed to say a lot without saying anything. "Monsieur is working, madam," she replied simply. "He is a very busy man." Then, as if sensing Sophia's interest, she added softly, "It is often said that the most precious things grow far from the gaze of others." Sophia remained frozen, disturbed by this cryptic response. That evening, as she stood in front of her bedroom window, watching the last rays of the sun die on the hills, she felt something new arise within her. It wasn't anger, it wasn't resentment. It was a spark of question, of mystery. Who was Alexander Belangi really? Was he really the broken man everyone made him out to be? Sophia didn't know it yet, but her view of her prisoner would soon change. For in the shadows of this silent mansion, there hid a secret far greater than she had ever imagined. The weeks turned into months, slipping slowly into a deceptive monotony. Yet beneath this quiet surface, something was changing. Sophia, who until then had tried to remain indifferent, began to notice disturbing details. First there were these black cars, with foreign plates, which appeared in the driveway of the mansion, often late in the evening. Powerful German sedans, luxury vehicles that had no place in their little village forgotten by the world. Then the voices she sometimes heard echoing behind closed doors. Conversations in English, German, sometimes even Japanese. One day, while passing one of the secondary lounges, she saw through the half-open door a strange scene. 3 men in suits surrounding Alexander, who, with calm and authority, was unfolding complex plans on a huge state-of-the-art touch screen. Around them, sophisticated laptops, electronic models, prototypes of high-tech equipment were piled up on the tables. None of this fit with the image of the broken young heir that the village had painted for him. One April morning, while the gardens were fragrant with honeysuckle, Alexander surprised her.
Sophia.
His voice was soft, but this time it carried a different note, almost solemn. If you don't mind, I'd like to show you something. She hesitated. Until now, she had jealously kept her distance, entrenched in her resentment. But deep down, a spark of curiosity, a need to understand, burned slowly. Maybe out of politeness.
Maybe out of boredom.
Or maybe because a part of her finally wanted to see who this discreet man really was. Okay, she finally said. He took her through corridors she had never explored, towards the wing of the mansion that had always been forbidden to her. When he opened the heavy armored door, Sophia felt like she was entering another world. In front of her was a huge space bathed in artificial light, with white walls and a shiny floor.
Modern laboratories, design rooms, miniature manufacturing lines.
On impeccable workbenches, complex devices took shape. Ultralight wheelchairs equipped with artificial intelligence, exoskeletons allowing you to walk despite paralysis, revolutionary communication tools for people deprived of motor skills. Engineers, focused and passionate, adjusted, tested, perfected. Sophia remained petrified. Alexander rolled slowly towards a prototype suspended from a mechanical arm. He touched his fingertips to a machine that seemed to merge aesthetics and performance. This is what we do here, he explained with sincere humility. We create tools to make the impossible possible. We give those who are forgotten the chance to regain their place in the world. Sophia felt her heart beat faster. She didn't know what to say. All his certainties were wavering. She stammered, almost ashamed. But why hide all this? Why live like a recluse when you could be recognized, admired? Alexander stared at her with his dark eyes, so calm, so immense. Because, he replied softly, where people see an armchair, they no longer see the man. They only see a weakness to be pitied, or to be despised. I chose to build my empire far from their eyes. Without their judgments, without their expectations. I prefer to walk in the shadows and let my actions speak for me. A long silence settled between them. Sophia felt a shiver run through her skin. At that precise moment she understood. She understood that the man before her was neither broken nor defeated. He was a silent giant, a conqueror of reality, a man who refused to be defined by the pity of others. In his eyes, she saw the strength of a world she had never suspected. A world built on patience, genius, and unwavering resilience. And for the first time since their marriage, Sophia felt something else arise within her.
No more bitterness. No more regret.
But a deep respect. And a strange admiration. Over time, almost without her noticing, Sophia's heart changed. What began as resentment and resignation slowly transformed. The bitterness faded like the mist at daybreak, replaced by a sincere admiration, an amazed curiosity for the man she discovered day after day. Alexander, without ever rushing her, patiently opened the doors to her universe. He guided her through the twists and turns of her projects, explaining with passion how each invention could change lives, how each detail, no matter how small, could restore freedom to those who had lost it. He encouraged her not to just be a spectator. "You are capable of much more than you think, Sophia," he often told her, his eyes shining with quiet certainty. Little by little, he trained her, entrusting her with real responsibilities. Coordinating a team, supervising the communication of certain projects, sometimes representing his company at small local conferences. Alexander gently pushed her out of the shell in which life and disappointments had confined her. One day, almost shyly, he slipped a brochure onto the breakfast table, a college correspondence program in a field she had once loved, social psychology. "I think you'd be brilliant," he murmured simply. Sophia hesitated for a long time. Then, buoyed by this new faith he had in her, a faith she had not had in herself for years, she signed up. It was a silent rebirth. The days took on a different color. Between her studies, her involvement in Alexander's projects, and the deep discussions they shared in the evening, Sophia blossomed like a flower long forgotten in the shadows. And throughout this metamorphosis, a deep bond, invisible and yet indestructible, was woven between them. It was not a sudden and all-consuming passion. It was better, a patient affection, rooted in mutual respect, complicity, the silent gratitude of having found, against all odds, someone who saw beyond appearances. A year after their marriage, life had an exceptional moment in store for them. They stood side by side in a huge conference room in Geneva, under the discreet gold of an international event. Alexander had just received a prestigious award for technological innovation in the service of inclusion. The flashes crackled, the praise rained down. And yet, in the midst of this excitement, there was only one thing that mattered to him: her. In the intimacy of a tender gesture, he slipped his hand into Sophia's, his fingers trembling slightly with emotion. Then, leaning towards her, he whispered, "Thank you for staying. Thank you for being you." Sophia felt her heart tighten painfully, but with a gentle pain, a beautiful pain.
That evening, in the reflection of the spotlights and the admiring smiles, she understood something fundamental.
She had not been saved by Alexander. It was he, this strong, secret man, sometimes overwhelmed by an unfathomable loneliness, who had been saved by her. They were two wounded souls, each bearing their invisible scars, brought together not by fate or obligation, but by something greater, more mysterious, a destiny woven in the shadows, united by a silent faith in the other's ability to rise again. The years passed. Those who had mocked Alexander, those who had whispered insults behind his back, had to swallow their venom. They watched, helplessly, the quiet grandeur of this improbable couple who had become indestructible. Sophia and Alexander were never admired for their wealth, although their fortune was immense, but for something infinitely rarer: the quiet strength that emanated from them, this gentle light that they carried within them, the fruit of their wounds, their patience and their love. For it is neither pity nor obligation, nor even need that binds hearts forever. It's respect, sincere admiration. And this true love, born in the most unexpected lands, forged in silences, exchanged glances, shared fights, which cannot be bought or commanded.
A love that, once born, never dies.